We begin in Scarborough, where a 15-year-old girl is dead after being struck by a vehicle while crossing the street this morning. It happened in the area of McCowan Road and Finch Avenue East, and that's where we find our Tyler Cheese. Tyler, what do we know so far?
On Brimwood Avenue, it's a street lined with residential homes, but there are also 3 schools clustered here, including Albert Campbell Collegiate. And we just got confirmation from the TDSB that the girl killed this morning is a student from that school. Toronto police tell us it's here at the intersection of Bridley Drive behind me that the girl was struck by a driver making a left turn at around 10 a.m. Here's Duty Senior Officer Brian Meslowski.
Our emergency services, paramedics attended on scene, and despite best efforts, the pedestrian was pronounced. Traffic investigation is leading the investigation. If anyone happened to be in the neighborhood at Brimwood Boulevard and Bridley Drive, please contact 416-808-1900. We're looking for witnesses, dash cam video, or any other type of evidence.
Meslowski didn't provide any more details about the victim, but said her next of kin have been notified. He says the driver is a 44-year-old woman who was driving a black Honda Civic that hit a tree during the incident. Police say she remained on the scene and cooperated with investigators. Traffic reconstructionists were on scene for most of the day, gathering evidence and trying to determine exactly what happened. We also spoke to a local resident today who says speeding is an issue along this stretch.
People just don't stop it, and here we have seen so many times I have seen people speeding, and even at the crosswalk, at the school, time, people just are not very careful.
Jamal Myers, city councillor for Scarborough North, posted on social media this afternoon offering his condolences and writing, "This is a painful reminder that we must prioritize road safety in our community, especially in residential neighborhoods." He plans to meet with Toronto Police and city staff to assess what steps can be taken to ensure street safety in this area. And again, Kelda, any witnesses or anyone with dash cam footage is asked to contact police.
All right, thanks so much for that, Tyler. Tyler Cheese reporting from McCowan and Finch tonight. And we're learning tonight that U.S. tariffs on vehicles not made in the United States are back on. U.S. President Donald Trump making that announcement late this afternoon, saying it will be in place on all countries. Trump says the move will encourage automakers to make vehicles in the U.S.
And what we're going to be doing is a 25% tariff on all cars that are not made in the United States. If they're made in the United States, there's absolutely no tariff. We start off with a 2.5% base, which is what we were at, and we go to 25%.
Premier Doug Ford is already responding to the news, saying that the move will hurt American workers and cause the financial markets to dive.
I had an opportunity to speak to the Prime Minister, and I'm in full support of preparing retaliatory tariffs, tariff for tariff, but we want to see what he's going to do on April the 2nd. As we've seen over a number of months, it's on again, off again, and he said he wasn't going to do it till April 2nd. Well, he launched an early attack, which is not surprising.
Ford says he's asked Prime Minister Mark Carney to convene a meeting with the premiers. Well, Mayor Olivia Chow's action plan to take on U.S. President Donald Trump's tariff threat won unanimous support at City Council this afternoon. Still, some councillors question its potential cost to taxpayers and whether it could make Canada's strained relationship with Americans even more hostile. Nama Weingarten has more.
People are feeling anxious. They are worried about their jobs, the cost of food, and the impact of this trade war will have on their wallets.
In a unanimous vote, Mayor Olivia Chow's plan to ease concerns and combat Trump's tariffs went through City Council. The 10-part plan encourages Torontonians to show local businesses some love, while restricting U.S. companies from most city contracts, with some leeway. But some councillors are concerned the city might scare off Americans from spending their money here.
What we don't want to do is send a signal that Americans are not welcome. We don't want to send a signal that we're anti-American.
We need more tangible.
Others wonder if the city would wind up paying more for less.
We don't know what the financial impact will be to the city. We don't know the impact it'll have on the Americans, which actually we do. It's nil.
Chow said they didn't do much analysis to determine what the financial impact could be, but urged to stop assuming the worst.
Why are we making assumptions that Canadian companies will do any work any slower or inferior?
CBC analysis shows 10% of the city's contracts went to American companies, worth roughly $210 million over 2 years. But the new rules won't apply to existing contracts. The plan also gives industrial property owners affected by tariffs a 6-month deferral for paying their taxes to the city, along with directing city staff to throw their daily spending at local businesses and limit their use of American rideshare services like Uber.
We need to be cautious about sending the wrong message to companies that have invested millions of dollars in our city, millions of dollars in our country to establish offices and employ hundreds of workers.
Why would you, in the middle of a trade war, not give priority to Canadians, local, especially GTA companies that are struggling to get riders?
The larger contracts, things for architectural, engineering, and
This economist says Toronto's plan is largely symbolic, and rather than scare Americans away or empty their wallets, it's more about sending a message.
It's a very important symbol. The city is sending a signal to Canadian families and Canadian workers that tax money paid by Toronto residents is going to stay here in Canada, that it's going to support Canadian jobs, it's going to support the Canadian economy. I think it's the right decision to make.
Trump threatened sectoral tariffs on April 2nd, but it's not certain. Chow says her action plan is a go until Trump permanently backs off tariff threats entirely.
We will stop fighting back if there is stability and peace on the land.
Chow says she'll be meeting with her economic action team once they have a sense of what the president has in store yet again. Nama Weingarten, CBC News, Toronto.
The victims of a mass shooting in Scarborough earlier this month are sharing more about what they experienced that night. Toronto Councillor Michael Thompson spoke at City Hall today, saying that he's been visiting some of the 12 people who were hurt.
The victims report that the attackers walked in with assault rifles and handguns, appeared young, professional, calm, in no hurry, shot up the restaurant, and then left without saying not one word.
The gunman burst into the Piper Arms pub on the night of March 7th and opened fire. Nobody was killed, but 7 people were shot and 5 people were injured by broken glass. The suspects are still at large. Police telling CBC today that they have no new information on the shooting. The U.S. government's pressure on higher education is resulting in some academics seeking employment here in Canada. President Donald Trump's administration has frozen hundreds of millions of dollars worth of funding from institutions unless they agree to his demands. As Dale Manukta explains, it's creating an opportunity for Canada to attract top-tier talent.
One Yale philosophy professor is trading in his New Haven, Connecticut credentials for a role at the University of Toronto's Munk School of Global Affairs and Public Policy.
The only reason I'm leaving Yale is because of this. We have a regime that's targeting the media, universities, education, and our social welfare system.
Jason Stanley is well known for his work on fascism and propaganda. He says right now Canadian values are the ones that best represent his own.
I truly believe that the University of Toronto has a commitment here, as does the country of Canada, to be a vanguard of democracy, of freedom and equality when it's under attack all around the world.
The Munk School first approached Stanley 2 years ago. What nudged him over the edge was the situation that unfolded at Columbia University. After Hamas's attack on Israel in 2023, the school became the focal point of pro-Palestinian demonstrations and encampments. Earlier this month, U.S. President Donald Trump pulled $400 million in funding and research grants unless the school agreed to conditions to address anti-Semitism.
They're punishing Columbia for allegedly tolerating anti-Semitism, but we don't know any of the details of that. We do know that they're investigating about 60 other schools for the same.
Last week, the school bent to the demands, outlining in a memo sweeping changes, including placing its Middle East Studies Department under new supervision.
I'm also very disappointed in my alma mater for the way it capitulated. The idea of the federal government reaching its hand down and using this enormous fiscal leverage to actually alter our academic practice, that is without precedent.
Trump has also suspended $175 million in funding from the University of Pennsylvania, the war on higher education, creating a situation where other academics are considering an exodus from the U.S.
What we've heard from our member institutions is they are getting calls from colleagues and counterparts in the United States, some of them very, very well-known and accomplished researchers who want to know that they're going to be able to continue their work in an environment that's supportive of science.
It's called a brain drain when intellectuals and highly trained people leave one country for another.
Historically, it's benefited us. In fact, we have been the drain. That's where refugee academics go. And I do think there's a real danger at this moment that the drain is going to start going in the opposite direction.
Dale Manukduk, CBC News, Toronto.
The one-of-a-kind craft show kicks off today. It's been a staple in Toronto for decades, but in the midst of our trade war with the U.S., there is renewed interest in the show and its focus on Canadian-made goods. Clara Pasica was at the Enercare Centre today where the show is being held. She shares how the Buy Local message at the heart of the event holds extra significance this year.
You can feel the atmosphere here at the one-of-a-kind Spring Show, celebrating its 50th year this year. This is a buy local event to its core. The event actually opened with the playing of the national anthem to resounding applause. We had the chance to speak with the director of the event, who had this to say.
So we started our first event in 1975, and this year will actually mark our 50th anniversary comes November. So for 50 years, we have been championing the Shop Local movement, which is something that we're very proud of. And this year we have over 450 artisans from coast to coast all across Canada joining us. So this is a great opportunity for you to do a little spring refresh, but also support Canadian businesses.
Now, this year's one-of-a-kind Spring Show comes right in the mid of a tariff war. I spoke with several of the artists about both the opportunities and challenges this time presents.
It's been a really tough time, with just the stress of the tariffs and the stress of losing business. I ship a lot of orders to the States. We get some materials that we're trying to source now all in Canada, but it's tough. They don't make everything here. So it has been really a struggle. And I mean, since the pandemic, the prices of everything has skyrocketed for businesses and personal. So it's already a tough time. And then adding this on top, it's really stressful. I'm hopeful for one of a kind because like I said, we've been doing it here for 50 years and it's everything here is made in Canada.
This is the biggest handmade craft show in all of Canada, and it's such an honor to be part of it, to be one of the ones who is accepted into a show like this. So that's huge, just any given time, but now especially to be Canadian and to have people who specifically want to support Canadian, be able to serve people with that is really important.
In a way, it's been good for me as a maker and as a small business. It's hard for me to, I guess, buy large, so buying small and local has just always been my ethos.
There's still lots of time to check it all out. This event runs until March 30th. Clara Pasica, CBC News, Toronto.
Turning back to the federal election now, Toronto Member of Parliament Kevin Vuong says he won't seek re-election. Vuong sits as an independent MP representing Spadina-Fort York. He posted on social media today that he's proud of the work he's done since being elected. Vuong ran in the 2021 federal election as a Liberal, but he was disavowed by the party just days before the vote. The Liberals said Vuong failed to disclose a 2019 sex assault charge. Now, that charge was ultimately dropped. Vuong says he's decided not to seek re-election because he wants to spend more time with his wife and young daughter. It's day 4 of the federal election campaign. Now, by this time next month, we'll be just a couple days away from heading to the polls. And Ontario is shaping up to be a big battleground in this campaign. Voters in this province handed Doug Ford's Progressive Conservatives a new mandate just last month. And now the federal parties are looking to copy Ford's success. Mike Crawley has the story.
Doug Ford and his Ontario PCs romped to victory on a tightly focused campaign message.
Canada is not for sale. Not to President Trump, not to anyone.
What does Ford's win with this theme during a provincial election mean for the federal election just a few weeks later?
The number one issue driving voter intent in the Ontario provincial campaign was clearly Trump and tariffs. There's, a lot of national polling data that would indicate that the same is true now in the federal election campaign, only even more so.
No choice but to hit back.
Ford pitched himself to Ontario voters as the best leader to fight the trade war with the U.S. Strategists of all stripes say the federal leaders have to make a similar pitch.
That is the only issue in this election, is protecting Canada and Trump and tariffs.
Marielle Nader is a consultant who has advised New Democrats across Canada.
If any party tries to make this ballot question other than Trump, then they're going to get drowned out and they're going to be irrelevant.
When voters are looking at Trump and tariffs and they're scared about what's going on, they're voting based on who they think is the best option to take on that threat.
Good to see you guys. For Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, this means pivoting from the messages he's been hammering away at for more than 2 years.
Situations changed, and you got to fight the campaign that's ahead of you, not the one that you wanted to fight necessarily.
Affordability in particular.
For Liberal leader Mark Carney, it creates an opportunity.
The fact that he sort of presents as this kind of boring dad, technocrat, smart guy economist is actually a superpower right now.
Her home was recently taken over.
For NDP leader Jagmeet Singh, the ballot question poses a challenge.
It is about Trump and who's going to be best to stand up to Trump, but reframe it in that who is going to be prioritized in that battle.
It's next to impossible to win a federal election without winning Ontario. Over the past 50 years, the party that took the most seats in this province won every election but one.
It's great to see everyone right back at home.
Workers were in the spotlight nearly every day of Ford's winning provincial campaign. You can already see examples of the federal leaders doing the same. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
All right, Colette joins us now with a first check on the forecast. And Colette, it was snowing a bit today, and then the snow stopped, the sun came out, a bit all over the place.
Yeah, we really have been, right? And this is what, spring tends to be like. We're getting that clearing, though, which is nice. It's setting us up for a pretty good-looking day, weather-wise anyways, for our Thursday. But something I also want to point out is, we've been into this cooler air. You can see this trough in the jet stream, but it's the whole pattern of the jet stream. So we've got a system that's going to be developing and moving through Western Canada and then kind of riding those upper winds and moving just south of the Great Lakes area as we head towards the weekend. And that's really important because with some of this colder air still in place and warmer air, especially picking up some moisture from the Gulf, that warmer air overriding cooler at the surface, we could get into a situation with some prolonged freezing rain or icing event. And so I want to give you a heads up about that. When you're making plans for this weekend, you really want to be aware. It's still a bit early to say or show exactly where it's going to set up, but for now it does kind of seem like it's going to be in this portion of Eastern Ontario with an impact from time to time on the GTA, especially the North GTA as well. So I'll keep fine-tuning that, but just so you know, special weather statement from Environment Canada for the weekend. In the meantime, enjoy the clearing that we've been getting. The sun's setting around 7:37 tonight. So the temperatures are just a little above freezing right now, and we still have to contend with winds. So we're still going to have some cold readings overnight tonight and wind chills to deal with tomorrow morning. Those winds will actually get lighter overnight tonight. Still, we're getting some of these gusts over 40 kilometers an hour at Pearson. Lighter overnight tonight and tomorrow morning, and then tomorrow afternoon, they'll shift to the southwest and start to get breezy again, but that's actually going to help with our temperature. Some of the flurries from earlier, mostly now over into Eastern Ontario or out across the lake, and there's that clearing that's been occurring, but that's also part of the reason why the temperatures will be sliding down tonight. Just looking at late day tomorrow, a slim chance of a shower passing through as the cold front goes through. Much of the day dry and sunny, and then it's this coming weekend. This is Friday night. We could get some of that freezing rain or icing mixing in here, then likely rain showers into Saturday for Toronto, and then perhaps a return Saturday night into Sunday. So this is all that time monitoring for you. -4 tonight, feeling like -8 tomorrow morning, but the payoff is that by tomorrow afternoon we should reach double digits, 10 degrees, sunshine and just some clouds coming in and that chance of showers late in the day.
Thanks so much, Colette.
You're welcome.
We told you earlier about the new U.S. auto tariffs coming into effect. Well, here at home, Liberal leader Mark Carney unveiled his party's multi-billion-dollar proposal to protect Canada's auto industry. Ashley Burke was in Windsor for his announcement on day 4 of campaigning.
Liberal leader Mark Carney in Windsor today, where the auto sector has long feared Donald Trump's tariff threats could crush the industry, halt production, and drive up costs for Canadians buying cars. In front of this bridge connecting Canada to the U.S., Carney proposed his government would create a $2 billion fund to give the auto industry a boost and build more car parts in Canada rather than relying on the U.S.
Under our plan, we will build an all-in Canada network for auto manufacturing components. Because on average, an auto part crosses that border, often through that bridge, over that bridge, 6 times before final assembly. And in a trade war, that's a huge vulnerability, tariff as it goes into the United States each time. So what we need to do is build more of those autos and more of each auto right here in Canada.
But a union here in Windsor representing auto workers says while Canada has the technology and the facilities to do this, it would be challenging and costly because of how intertwined the Canada-U.S. supply chain is.
It would be difficult because the companies do have a lot of back and forth. It's efficient to have one plant produce multiple parts for multiple plants, obviously.
Carney is also visiting London and Kitchener today as he makes his pitch in southwestern Ontario to voters and tries to address a big challenge his campaign is facing, differentiating himself from the Trudeau government. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Windsor.
In almost every federal election, seniors vote in the greatest numbers of any demographic. So party leaders do their best to woo them. And this election is no different. Alexander Silberman has more.
This will save a working senior up to $1,300.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre pitching tax cuts for seniors at a campaign stop in Montmagny, Quebec.
And I will see to it the system rewards hard work by people of all ages.
The Conservatives outlining their plan to help working seniors, allowing them to earn up to $34,000 tax-free and keep savings in RRSPs until age 73. Poilievre is also pledging to keep retirement at age 65.
No senior should be living in poverty.
NDP leader Jagmeet Singh promising to raise the guaranteed income supplement and disability benefit.
You cry now, but this I don't know.
His party also promising an increase to the tax-free income amount, up to $19,000.
Some of the poorest and most vulnerable are literally struggling to put food on the table and are living in poverty. It would lift them out of poverty immediately.
With the backdrop of the Ambassador Bridge, Liberal leader Mark Carney focusing today on the Canadian economy. He was in Windsor, Ontario, the country's automotive capital, announcing a promise for a $2 billion strategic response fund to support workers hit by U.S. tariffs.
This is going to go directly to companies to make investments to build Canada strong. And that's the message. So it's not about waiting until the Americans become more reasonable. It's about acting now.
Amid the ongoing trade war, the stress on the economy is continuing to shape this election campaign, with many older Canadians feeling pinched by the cost of living. Affordability will be a big issue as they watch party platforms. Alexander Silberman, CBC News, Ottawa.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre took aim at Mark Carney during a campaign stop in southern Ontario, accusing the Liberal leader of hiding his assets in tax havens.
He thinks that taxes are just for the little people, not for big shot bankers like him. This is exactly the wrong kind of experience we need in a prime minister, and the worst kinds of conflicts of interest.
Poilievre has mentioned Brookfield several times on the campaign trail. Carney was an executive at the asset management company. 2 funds that he co-chaired were registered in Bermuda, but it is not clear whether those funds included any of Carney's personal assets. Carney has called Poilievre a, quote, conspiracy theorist. He has said the funds were registered in Bermuda to avoid double taxation. Now, on the campaign trail, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh outlined his plans for taxes. Speaking in Hamilton, he promised to eliminate the GST on some essential items if he's elected, and said he would cut the basic personal exemption on income tax for low and middle income earners.
Our plan helps middle-class folks the most, and the difference is that we've noticed from the other plans that are out there, the Liberals and Conservatives, their plan is one that helps millionaires the most.
Singh said the exemption would help Canadians more than tax cuts promised by Liberal leader Mark Carney and Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre. The NDP is now a distant third in the federal election campaign and faces an uphill battle. Recent polls show some of the lowest levels of support for the party in years. Welcome back. The Toronto Blue Jays are getting set for their home opener tomorrow, and today at City Hall, Mayor Olivia Chow and Blue Jays mascot Ace were on hand to wish the Jays well.
Whether you're cheering from the stands, your local sports bar, or your couch at home, one thing is for sure. Toronto bleeds blue for our Jays. Yeah!
Okay, so flurries in the air may not make it feel like baseball season, but the Blue Jays flag was raised at City Hall. The mayor also made mention of some of the new eats you can get at Rogers Centre this season, many of which are made using Ontario meat. The Jays will host the Baltimore Orioles in their opening series tomorrow afternoon. And today, the team had one last workout day before the real action gets underway. Our Greg Ross was there.
It may still only be March, but the sounds of summer have returned to Toronto for a new season filled with new hope and new excitement.
I'm excited to get back out there and compete.
Every year you want to come out of spring training feeling like you have a very good chance to contend, and we feel that.
Despite the optimism, there's no doubt the Jays have also brought a dark cloud of uncertainty back from Florida with them. 2 of the Blue Jays' high-profile players enter 2025 on expiring contracts. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Bo Bichette could become free agents at season's end.
We've been consistently hopeful that we can reach an agreement.
Blue Jays GM Ross Atkins says the team has been working on re-signing slugger Guerrero Jr. to a long-term extension, and while they've yet to come to terms on one, he says they're not giving up.
Whether that happens during the season or via free agency, we'll stay open and never close any doors.
If this is the final season for the 2 Blue Jays stars, they may have something left to prove. Guerrero Jr. and Bichette are now entering their 7th season together with the Blue Jays, and while they've made it to the postseason 3 times in that span, they've yet to win a single game when it counts the most.
I think we just want to prove that we're winners, to be honest, and the only way to do that is focus on the day-to-day and be present, and that's what we're doing, just trying to go out there and win every day.
The Jays are also coming off a disappointing campaign last season, and it's not clear if they've done enough over the winter to be a contender again this year.
Obviously, last year was a tough year, but we have a lot of situations like injuries, hurt. Also, people don't have the year they wanted, but that's baseball. That's part of the game.
We understand what's at stake this year and every year, but I think to kind of put extra pressure on ourselves or for players to do it individually would be counterproductive.
The Jays will host the Baltimore Orioles here at the Rogers Centre tomorrow afternoon in their season opener. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Canada's Wonderland is launching their 2025 season with a new roller coaster. Not only will it be the longest, tallest, and fastest launch coaster in the country, it's set to break a world record.
It's going to be crazy. Is like not only are you launching into the bottom of the mountain and launching straight vertical at the top 50 meters, but once you're up there, gravity's going to take you and you're going to be racing through 9 inversions, and that's going to be huge. Like imagine flipping and turning 9 times in a row, right? That is going to be the most for any launch coaster in the world.
And ferry will blast up to 115 kilometers per hour and 50 meters into the sky after dropping underneath the park's iconic Wonder Mountain. The record-breaking 9 inversions will be over in less than a minute and a half. The project is still under construction, with the roller coaster expected to open when the park opens for the season on May 8th. Hundreds of people have taken to the streets of Gaza this week to demand Hamas relinquish power. Protesters have been marching and chanting, quote, "Out, out, Hamas, out." Angry demonstrators marched through the streets of Gaza City on Wednesday, a day before a similar protest took place 10 kilometers north in Beit Lahia. That area has been reduced to rubble since the war started in October 2023. The protests erupted when Israel ordered the evacuation of parts of the city. That order came after members of Islamic Jihad fired rockets at Israel on Monday. Masked men dispersed the crowd using violence, even assaulting some demonstrators. Hamas has accused the demonstrators of being traitors. Canada has listed both Hamas and Islamic Jihad as terrorist organizations. Wildfires continue to rage in South Korea, and the death toll is rising. At least 24 people are confirmed dead, including a pilot who was fighting one of the wildfires when his helicopter crashed. More than 27,000 people have had to flee their homes, and at least 200 structures have been destroyed, including a 1,300-year-old Buddhist temple. The fires, fueled by strong winds and dry weather, have burned through more than 17,000 hectares of land so far. Winnipeg police have identified the 4th victim of serial killer Jeremy Sabitsky. Now, they believe she was Ashley Shingoose, who was 30 years old when she went missing 3 years ago. Police believe her remains are in a local landfill and express regret when making the announcement on Wednesday.
We have had time for reflection, almost nearly 3 years. While we cannot undo the past, we can learn from it.
Shingoose's identity was confirmed when evidence gathered during the investigation was sent for DNA analysis. The results came back on Monday. Police are now preparing to search for her remains. Shingoose was last seen near a homeless shelter in Winnipeg. Skibitsky was convicted last year of 4 counts of first-degree murder. Looming U.S. tariffs have prompted Canadians to rally around the country's oil and gas sector. Julia Wong traveled to the geographic heart of the industry, Fort McMurray, to hear from businesses and workers about their priorities for the next government.
So here we have one of the pumps that our clients dropped off.
Oil and gas is the heart and soul of this Fort McMurray heavy equipment repair company. But with the trade war, plans to expand and hire more staff are paused indefinitely.
I've been in McMurray my whole life and I've seen the ups and downs, but this feels different. This feels a lot different, and a lot of uncertainty with respects to the tariffs and respects to elections now being called.
An election oil country is watching closely. Corey Coffey wants party leaders to know the stakes are high.
I want to hear how they want to unite Canada. So how do we fit into this national unity, right? What are their plans for increasing the access of our resources to, the West Coast and the East Coast.
Alberta sends almost all of its crude oil south of the border.
Pump operators, heavy equipment operators,
and livelihoods in this community rely on the energy sector. At this job fair, the federal party's plans for Canadian energy are key.
The emissions reduction policies that we look to hear from all the major parties. The second probably being carbon pricing, their strategy for that, and then thirdly, as we talk to the tariffs and our economic development and future trade relations with worldwide.
I'd like to see more pipelines come around.
Tariff threats have splintered this country's relationship with the U.S. People here want more Canadian support and certainty.
I would hope from this election or nationally that our population would understand it's a bit of a turning point in Canada's history, and maybe it's path to prosperity, and understand the importance of oil and gas to our economy and to our prosperity and protecting our sovereignty.
Sovereignty that many see as tied to energy independence. making a ballot box question here: who's best suited to handle this reckoning for Canadian oil and gas? Julia Wong, CBC News, Fort McMurray, Alberta.
Thousands of Hudson's Bay workers will soon be losing their jobs, and they won't be receiving any severance pay. On the other hand, some top staff will be getting big bonuses as the company tries to restructure. Sophia Harris has more.
Kevin Grell is one of 9,300 Hudson's Bay workers worried about losing their jobs as the retailer liquidates most of its stores. Adding to the stress, the cash-strapped company is not paying workers severance. Instead, they must file a claim with Hudson's Bay and likely get pennies on the dollar.
It's sad. It's distressing.
So Grell was almost at a loss for words when he learned from CBC News Hudson's Bay will pay 121 managers and executives up to $3 million total in retention bonuses as the company winds down and tries to restructure.
What do you think about these bonus payments?
That's not good. Honestly, Sophia, if I was to answer that, I may get in trouble.
After taking a pause, he added,
Give the workers a little something.
This employment lawyer says insolvent companies often pay retention bonuses to keep top staff as they wind down or restructure.
You need to be able to retain your top people who are going to be designing and implementing the strategy and the plan to reorganize the business.
Hudson's Bay didn't comment on the bonus payments, but did say laid-off workers can apply for federal government financial assistance. However, that will likely cover just a portion of what they're owed.
It is absolutely egregious. We absolutely would like to see additional worker protections in the event of job loss due to a large employer like Hudson's Bay shutting down operations.
Actions are being taken to protect pensions.
In 2023, the federal government passed legislation improving protections for workers' pensions in bankruptcy cases.
People do deserve to get their severance when companies go bankrupt.
Despite heated debate, the legislation was not extended to include severance pay protections.
It was incredibly disappointing and frustrating.
The president of the Canadian Labour Congress says, with what's happening at Hudson's Bay, she hopes workers' rights becomes an election issue. Sophia Harris, CBC News, Vancouver.
U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has denied texting war plans to a journalist as part of a group chat. He says the information that was accidentally shared with a magazine editor included only, quote, attack plans. Still, the magazine has released text messages that include classified information, including the names of CIA agents, targeted locations, and other sensitive information. And that has Democrats demanding resignations. Richard Madden has more.
I would characterize this messaging thread as a policy discussion, a sensitive policy discussion.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt trying to contain the fallout after yet another stunning round of text messages show Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth sharing specific military attack plans in Yemen that inadvertently included a journalist to the secret group chat.
There was no classified information transmitted. There were no war plans discussed.
So in response to those denials, reporter Jeffrey Goldberg published more screen grabs from the group chat showing attack plans were discussed. These messages appear to show the defense secretary sharing the timing, the type of aircrafts, and weapons to be used in airstrikes against Houthi militias in Yemen mere hours before it happened. And on the chain were the vice president, secretary of state, and other top intelligence leaders, all texting through third-party messaging app Signal.
Obviously, someone made a mistake. Someone made a big mistake and added a journalist. Nothing against journalists, but you ain't supposed to be on that thing.
Trump's national security advisor has since admitted he accidentally invited Goldberg to their secret group chat. On Capitol Hill, Democrats are furious, demanding resignations.
This text message is clearly classified information. Secretary Hegseth has disclosed military plans as well as classified information. He needs to resign immediately.
As the White House tries to deflect and deny, Democrats are demanding investigations, saying if the app had been compromised by an adversary, the lives of American troops in the operation could have been jeopardized. Richard Madden, CBC News, Washington.
And as we head to break, here's a look at where the markets closed today. The TSX dropped 178 points, the Dow fell 132 points, and the dollar traded up to 70.09 cents US. We'll be right back. Justin Trudeau has called abandoning electoral reform his biggest regret as Prime Minister. So is it possible to introduce reform in time for this upcoming election? Ashley Fraser looks into that for us.
Is it possible for Canada's voting system to change in time for this federal election?
No, it isn't. It wouldn't be possible.
So why is that? First, we have to look at the system that's currently in place. A term you've probably heard, first past the post. It's a system Canada's used for over 150 years. In an election, the candidate with more votes than any other candidate wins a given riding, even if they don't have a majority of the votes. The idea of changing the system, or what's called electoral reform, is not new. On one of our recent videos, a lot of you shared that you want a different way of voting in the federal election. The idea was even promised by former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in 2015. And when he stepped down, he called abandoning electoral reform his greatest regret.
I do wish that we'd been able to change the way we elect our governments in this country so that people could simply choose a second choice or a third choice on the same ballot.
Trudeau said while running for Liberal Party leader in 2013 that he was in favour of the ranked ballot system, which is how we vote for Canadian political party leaders. The other system that could be used is called proportional representation. It's used by over 90 countries around the world. And like the name suggests, it's the idea that the percentage of votes is proportional to the number of seats in the House of Commons. That can be done in a few different ways. In Ireland, they use proportional representation with a single transferable vote, where voters rank a list of candidates in order of their preference.
If a political party feels that it has a strong showing in a particular constituency, it might run two candidates. I, as a voter, not only have a choice of voting for the party that I prefer, but I can also vote for the candidate within that party that I prefer.
One voter I spoke to says he likes proportional representation because they can lead to coalition governments.
It means that people have to stop playing games and work together to get anything done. We don't need the leader of the Conservative Party or the leader of the New Democratic Party wasting their time and energy criticizing the party in power.
But it can also lead to instability as small parties can have more influence. So back to our original question, why isn't reform achievable for this upcoming election? For one, it's a pretty big change that could take years and could involve a referendum or a citizens' assembly. In New Zealand, they used a referendum on whether to change the system from first past the post in 1992.
They then changed their system and then they held a referendum on whether to keep it. And that took multiple election cycles to do.
For that to happen, the government in power needs to be on board.
We've had historical examples in the past in Canada of governments changing their voting systems. 3 provincial governments changed their voting systems from first past the post to mixed systems.
Last year, a motion in the House of Commons called on the federal government to establish a citizens' assembly on electoral reform, but that motion failed to pass. We reached out to the main political parties in Canada about their thoughts on electoral reform. The Liberal and Conservative parties did not get back to us by our deadline. The Green Party told us that they strongly believe that the first past the post system should be changed into a proportional voting system where every vote counts. We also spoke to the NDP critic for democratic reform. They specifically support mixed member proportional representation, where someone is voted in locally and regionally to better represent the parties in the House of Commons. So what are your thoughts about electoral reform?
Email us at ask@cbc.ca.
Well, Colette, just looking at the live shot, it looks really nice out there right now, but earlier there were some flurries.
Yeah, we had the flurries and, the wind's still there, a cool day, but we finally got into some of that clearing, and nice to have that sunshine coming back at us, allowing for some enjoyment and really the setup for tomorrow being a nice day. But in the interim, we will have some cool temperatures tonight. Now, also something coming our way, and this is for the weekend, a heads up for the weekend, a special weather statement from Environment Canada. We may have a prolonged period of freezing rain or an icing event. So yes, we're talking about some bad conditions on roadways, but potentially even some power outages and maybe it kind of coming into the GTA, then leaving and then returning. I'll walk you through that in just a moment. But here we are with those clearing skies, still some of those flurries in eastern Ontario with the clear conditions. That's why it's chilly tonight. And all the winds do get lighter, but it's still going to be enough to provide a wind chill of about -8 for tomorrow morning. Sunny through the day tomorrow. This is just later in the day, 6 p.m., a chance for a few showers just kind of going through as the cold front passes, which means, yes, after a mild day tomorrow, it cools down again on Friday. And then here comes the system later on Friday evening. Some rain showers then as temperatures fall Friday night, changing over to freezing rain or maybe mixing with some ice pellets in there. And then, if we just look at Friday night into Saturday, it looks like it's more towards eastern Ontario where it really builds up. But I just want to now roll this forward. Okay, not much change Saturday. We'll have rain showers in the GTA. But into Sunday, that's when it could come back, and we get it coming back towards the GTA and along the north shore of Lake Ontario. So lots to be watching for. Still a few days away, and I'll keep fine-tuning that forecast. -4, though, tonight will be the reading on the thermometer. If we don't look at that wind chill, 10 degrees tomorrow, and then there we go into the weekend. Some messy conditions coming our way, and you'll want to monitor road conditions.
And take advantage of tomorrow, right? Thursday looking pretty good.
Yes.
Double digits. Thanks so much, Colette. And that's all the time we have tonight. Thanks for watching. Have a great night, everyone.